Now, this isn't going to be like as much as a character video or, some form of breakdown, as much it's more trying to just kind of gauge Suzaku's value right now in terms of his position in the story. And when you get used to an author and you kind of know aspects about them, especially like a long-going mangaka, and one of the aspects obviously that a Mashima fan has is that he's been making manga nonstop since the 90s. So there's a good amount of material to work off that if you read all of Rave Master, Fairy Tail Eden Zero, and read like stuff like his short stories, you can kind of understand signs of when he's going to give a character more value than you would probably otherwise expect, or in a way that is an indicator of like, okay, he likes this guy's going to be, that's going to end up having a bit more weight as things continue. There are certain ways, like one, there's usually a set that mangakas will have as like their measuring stick characters, like when they just want to have a character that is going to pretty much just be strong and then lose just to hype up other characters. And a lot of the times they have that kind of Blood Knight thing, but like one of the things that Mashima will do is whenever you know that he's like somebody's going to have more value than probably their initial kind of like gauging is probably set at, is how human-like do you really kind of get from them? Are they just bad guys? I mean, look at someone like, for instance, Zenkro was like he was a very bad guy. He was a very malefic and all around like overly aggressive and kind of maniacal dude. I mean, he was killing his like people in his own guild for just saying that Natsu was strong. Not even saying that like he was stronger than X, Y, or Z, just saying he was strong in general. Whereas the only thing I really ever saw outside of that for Zenkro would be a couple interactions with the other members of the kin. I mean, that's all we really had. Whereas Suzaku, Mashima has really gone out of his way to give him a lot of character content in the short span that he's actually been in the series. Because though he feels like he's been around longer, it was just that he was introduced in chapter 63 of 100 Years Quest. We didn't even really get to see him until after the fights with Yoko really went down, and at that point, we just got the one chapter where he ended up talking to the Grand White Priestess and stuff, and fodderized some Sumeaka, nobody random enemies, and then after that, like he comes in, the whole bit with him and Natsu, I think, is a really good indicator of Mashima's preference to this character. And not only that, during the parts with the whole back and forth between him and the whole whiteout religion, is that he very clearly cares about his guild much more than any of the other characters in Diablos that we've seen so far. Can't really count Wraith, but like Nibaru, Kyria Madmol, Scolion, we haven't really seen anything from the other ones, from any of the other Black Dragon Slayer Knights, or anything from Georg, that seemed like they really cared too much about their guild, where Suzaku very much obviously does. Now, Suzaku has the mentality of a Fairy Tail member, so that already sets up the possibilities of the questions of, like, by the end of this, is it going to be he joins the guild, or is it going to be something kind of like with Sting and Rogue, where after, interactions with the Fairy Tail Guild kind of puts them on a better pathway that ends up having them kind of become way more of a healthy guild instead of one that is, I wouldn't say as cutthroat, because we don't know as much about Diablos. They seem way more kind of chill than, say, like, Sabretooth was. Sabretooth, obviously, like, they had a little bit almost like a militaristic kind of setup going on with Gemma making them stand at attention and stuff, and only kind of speaking when spoken to. Whereas, like, with Georg, it just seemed like they kind of were in the room, and Georg would sit there and eat and listen to him and kind of talk back, and he'd just be like, all right, status report kind of thing. Give me the rundown of what you got, and then we'll see how we're going to adjust things. He seemed way more kind of chill, kind of like in that viciousness, but at the same time, one that clearly, like, him and his guild people got along enough that they could kind of communicate seemingly without being completely uneased by him. He didn't seem at least like one of those guys that kind of commanded over his, his guild people with fear. But when I was talking about that is, it's moreover the fact that Mashima has given Suzaku a lot of character content. Like, he has the whole stuff about how, like, when he was hearing them just say stuff about being naked, he thought that was hilarious. The whole part about him caring about his guild, in both being upset that, any harm was brought to them, but also wanting to get revenge on Fairy Tail if they ever got in their way again and threaten their guild. And then right now, with all the stuff with Celine and Georg, he's got his own character arc going on. And there's also another thing you can do with Mashima. Mashima's series is whenever he does a reference to something from his other series. Like, there are things that are crossed over, like you can get like a small thing. Like, for instance, there was a villain in Rave Master who had the dark breed called Acid Rule, and one of the members of the Hungry Wolf Knights had that on his jacket as he used an acid magic. So stuff like that, it's just like, okay, yeah, you can put like a small amount of kind of Easter egg cameo on that, whereas stuff that is more important, like ongoing things, always have a level of storyline weight to it. Mildian is important in Fairy Tail Eden Zero and Rave Master. Etherion, they're the Rathion 6 in Rave Master, but it's like it's the similar same pretty much name. Mashima had Rathion 6 as like a placeholder name in Fairy Tail, but he didn't think of a name otherwise for them, so he ended up just sticking with it, and obviously that's now become one of the things that kind of carries over in his series as he put, 2 different ones in Eden Zero for it. But with Suzaku, unless it changes in the officials, the fact his magic is Sword Saint, Dragon Slaying magic, is potentially a big deal, because the person otherwise, like in Mashima lore, that had the title of Sword Saint was the first Rave Master himself, Shiba Roses. So there's a lot of potential value in Suzaku's character from a lot of standing points, not only from his actual character. Mashima has clearly given him more than just being he's built him to be a character that will last more than just like being around for a couple fights. The fact that we have more humanizing aspects about Suzaku and like how his personality can switch, but also about how he can communicate pretty calmly and pretty just pretty much very kind of standard. Like, he's actually just like a regular guy like talking about with these other dudes, and not some super powerful dragon slayer that's gonna cut someone down the second that they say something he doesn't like. Suzaku definitely has a very long-term, I think, vibe to him, and the same thing with like Celine. I think almost Tabata. I think Mashima is you can really tell when he's, for like what the character is, you can tell like how much he's actually investing as a writer into some of these characters, with just like how much he's really giving them. And I guess Celine and Suzaku really are the good examples of that in 100 Years Quest. They're the most ongoing, really, new characters besides like Scullion, Madmol, and Kyria. But we haven't even got a flashback really with them. We have gotten nothing on any of them. So like, we've got more character insight and more character content on Suzaku. Like the stuff with Georg and Celine, that's already a character arc for him, whereas none of the Diablos main trio have any of that. So far they've been around, but they haven't really done that much, whereas in the span of a couple chapters, Mashima did more with Suzaku than he did with all 3 of that trio combined. So I'm still really hyped for Suzaku up and coming. I really want to see who he's fighting. I want to see like how his story arc kind of plays out. But I do genuinely think that Mashima does like this character. And I can fully understand, because when authors, if they're going to get a character that they have a lot of care for, a lot of plans for, and a lot of just general usage on them, they're going to want to, they're obviously going to prioritize them over like smaller characters that don't hold even remotely close to that level of stature. But anyway, other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video from the like button, subscribe, and check out my other videos. Been that, appreciate everybody's art, subscribe. Thank you all for listening. Bye.